Now we're coming to the third one for public hearing, Policy 6010, School Attendance Areas.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members, Dr. Wu, Dr. Maturano. So it's my great pleasure here. I'm here to, my name is Chen. I'm here to share my thoughts on Dr. Maturano's proposed revisions on Policy 6010. And also I'm here to support my daughter as she just gave her very first public testimony. So over the past few years, as you may be aware, many parents in Howard County, including myself, start understanding the importance of Policy 6010. So when the proposal came out, I spent some time to take a closer look. I want to first applaud some changes that had been repeatedly requested by parents before, such as exempting certain students from repeated redistricting and allowing for additional public testimony after every iteration of polygon moves. Meanwhile, I also find some proposed change may create new and long-lasting problems. For example, the targeted utilization range 90% to 110% is now proposed as one of the conditions that triggers redistricting. As a data scientist, I'm very curious and wonder if Hcpss has conducted any simulations using attendance information from previous years to better understand the impact of this proposal. That is, how frequent this condition would have been met, and how this new condition would have improved the whole districting process, if any. Without any data to support change like that, I'm deeply concerned that an arbitrary utilization range will result in too many unnecessary redistricting with marginal or no benefits at all. In addition, regarding the transparency of area attendance committee meetings, I strongly believe that, given a significant role in informing redistricting plans, the meeting should remain open to public or recorded for public record, instead of just simply providing summary notes to public as proposed. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hu. Our next speaker is Mr. Brent Lovelace. Mr. Lovelace, please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Brent Lovelace. I'm the VP of Legislation for the PTA Council of Howard County. The PTA Council of Howard County had the privilege of membership in this committee and ability to communicate with its facilitators. The PTA Council direction is authorized through communication with local presidents and delegates who have voted and reaffirmed positions that schools should not be operated beyond 100% capacity, and that policy should not exacerbate concentrations of poverty. Two items of change in the draft 6010 policy were of particular interest. The first being the establishing of a weighting framework to establish an analytic process that relies less on single plan manual intervention processes while retaining board authority to set priorities and exemptions. This important change is reflected in Section 3B, but the majority of the framework language for weighting set by the board did not make it out of committee. Recent board meetings have included statements that weighting is impossible. To that, we can only quote, "The difficult takes time, the impossible takes a little bit longer." The public is aware of old software that has been utilized and the existence of new software, but the undemonstrated new tools with past requests for support lead us to believe that there is a need for more resources. The PTA Council is currently working with the state to enable a pilot to assist Howard County Public School System with state resources from academia to support these capabilities going forward. Exclusion of the weighting standards in this policy may hamper the development of this dynamic capability. The second and most significant item of interest is the retention of the term target utilization. This has been admittingly misused to signify a level of which redistricting considerations are initiated, as well as defining the desired result at the end. Despite language in Section 3BA1 making efficient use of space with utilization of 90 to 100% as a consideration, the term capacity utilization and target utilization are intertwined and are repeated interchangeably in section 3B1, 4V, 3A3, 3C3B, 3C3, R2D2, and all that. Although this policy sees minor revisions from year to year, both this committee and prior committees have voted to reduce these references, which implicitly set as a policy the utilizations at over 100%, affecting all children.
Thank you, Ms. Lovelace. Please share your testimony with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. I respectfully request that you address a few issues with respect to this policy. The first issue is I hope that you can clarify what you mean by contiguous. Does the entire school area need to be contiguous or just parts? Would Appleton, which is in 3 completely separate pieces, be considered contiguous? Likewise, how do polygon deserts affect contiguity? Polygon deserts include large commercial and industrial areas, Howard Community College, the hospital, wildlife refuges, and other features like Elliott Farm, Bob Lucido Field, and Blandair. For example, the children in our elementary school are largely not contiguous since there's a population north of the mall, Howard Community College, and the hospital, and a population that is south of these polygon deserts. Will that be considered? Facility utilization, my second point is that facility utilization should include the bus loop. Our current elementary school was years ahead of its time and was built to be a walking school. There was initially space in the bus loop for 1 bus. You can fit 2 buses safely. As a result of the last redistricting, there was a significant increase in the number of bus riders to our school and no capacity for the buses. Currently, cars are directed by school personnel to travel on the wrong side of the street around the buses, through car loop, in a carefully orchestrated automotive dance happening 2 times a day. Then the pedestrians join in this dance, traveling through the moving cars on 4 crosswalks that includes one very busy crosswalk that car loop passes through twice. This dance is orchestrated by our amazing teachers and staff who essentially spend their valuable time directing traffic when they could be doing things that would benefit their students more. I think it's fair to say that all hands are on deck, yet many parents report safety concerns or leave them unreported. This should have been considered during redistricting, but instead a single student capacity utilization number is used that doesn't reflect these realities. As an aside, this is one of several reasons this school should be examined with respect to new school construction. Third, last time when submitting testimony, the message that it would be made public came after submission. Please codify that individuals submitting written testimony be informed that it will be made public prior to submission of that material, which can include private information. Fourth, in numerous places, the policy refers to community input from only 1 or more members of an affected household. This is incredibly awkward language. I believe the intent is that only households affected can testify and that any number of individuals from that household can testify, but it is unclear and should be made more clear. Regardless, I think it is concerning to limit testimony in this way.
Thank you, Dr. Hoco.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it beep. Okay.
Yes, please share your testimony with the board. We appreciate that. And you will come back to Mr. Manganino. Mr. Manganino, please go ahead.
Okay. Hey, hi, board. Thank you very much. Sorry about the technical difficulty. My name is Carl Manganillo. I'm a business owner in Ellicott City and a father of a middle school child. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide feedback on 6010. First and foremost, let me say I appreciate selfless hours you all put in for the benefit of our kids. So I just want to say thank you. 6010 calls for the board members to attempt to balance capacity, continuity, diversity, and determining attendance boundaries. As we all know, it is impossible to create a perfect set of boundaries that will meet all of these stated goals at the same time. For example, if a decision were to be made to optimize for capacity in one polygon, this may have the side effect of actually damaging the diversity goal for that same polygon. Being an engineer, this is what we know as a multi-optimization problem. For these types of problems, it means it's impossible to optimize for all of the outcomes you desire at once. Any engineering decision in supporting one goal will almost certainly damage another. The problem I have with policy 6010 is it does not specify what should be, in my opinion, the most important detail in the whole policy, and that is the prioritization of these goals: capacity, continuity, diversity, and how they should be weighted against each other. There is no guidance to board members on when to weigh one goal over another and when not to. There are many polygons to consider in Howard County, and with each decision on one polygon, an often damaging cascading effect is felt many downstream. Like whack-a-mole. Knock down one mole, another one pops up. It's hard enough to play one-dimensional whack-a-mole with just capacity. Now we ask the board members to play in 3 dimensions against all 3 stated goals. Even the best AI, machine learning, computer program would struggle creating a fair optimization. Do we really want to leave the important fate of where our children will be going to school to essentially result of a game of 3D whack-a-mole? Summary, if the primary motivation behind 6010 is to attempt to codify the set of criteria that should be applied to the decision-making of attendance boundaries in a transparent way, I would assert that this policy is not sufficiently instructive to the board on how to make these decisions due to the lack of guidance of the appropriate balance of these divergent competing goals of capacity, continuity, and diversity. Lack of instructions on how to balance these various factors leave a gaping subjective hole for each board member to fill on their own, good intention or not, without any shared understanding amongst the board members and the public as to how these factors are to be appropriately balanced. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Manganino. And Ms. Regan Mercer. Ms. Mercer, please go ahead. You are muted.
Hi, can you hear me this time?
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Regan Mercer. I am a lifelong resident of Howard County. I went to Appleton, Clarksville Middle, and Wild Lake High School. My children currently attend school in Howard County as well. Similar to the previous, my biggest problem with this policy is that it fails to rank the importance of each item. The board is left to balance a variety of aspects with no direction as to which one is considered most important. So we end up with schools with overutilization next to schools that have space. I feel that this policy should rank the importance of each individual metric that should be considered, starting with utilization at the top and followed by diversity, because when we know that when we concentrate poverty, that makes it harder for that school to educate children. I think that we should rank these policies based on utilization, based on the fiscal responsibility of not overburdening one school with students who need extra support, because we know that when we have 40% or less farms at a school, that school can support those students without needing significant boosts of extra funds. And additionally, because busing causes a lot of fiscal costs as well, that would be a third one, but they need to be ranked so that the board members know what needs to come first instead of trying to juggle them. And I think the board needs that direction and that the items should be ranked. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Our next speaker is Mr. Vipin Sahiwani. Mr. Sahiwani, please go ahead.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Martirano. Thank you for having me. As Yogi Berra said, it's deja vu all over again. The number 6010 in our minds is more dreadful than the evil, infamous number 666. So I credit all of you and Dr. Martirano for trying to reform the policy. I'm also a little dismayed by the current draft. Our community has stood divided for last 2 years. We've had few ideologues trying to tower over residents of Howard County. Residents who are hardworking, simple living, and who had a life before that infamous redistricting. This is your chance to make up to the community you pledged to serve. As you reform the policy, I would like to share 4 things that hardworking parents of Howard County want from their elected representatives and the superintendent. These are not big asks, but rather simple expectations. People of Howard County do not want you to upend their life and want your actions to cause minimal disruptions. So the new policy should prescribe redistricting when it is essential, and that too only to address capacity issues. Balancing capacity should be the primary, if not the only goal of any redistricting. People of Howard County want the policy to be simple and easy to understand. Please do not clutter the policy with too many driving factors, and kindly drop any socioeconomic criteria that may give decision makers cover for social engineering that has no basis, is based on faulty assumptions, and involves sending kids away, far away schools, away from their familial backgrounds. People of Howard County want to go to school with their neighbors. You created polygons to represent contiguous neighborhoods. Please specify in the policy to keep neighborhoods together, communities stable, and keep walkers as walkers. This action would not only help people invest in the school they identify with, but will also minimize transportation costs for the school system. People of Howard County, last, want a transparent board and committee actions. Please restore the language that keeps attendance area committee meetings subject to Maryland Opens Meetings Act. With these 4 straightforward revisions to the policy, I believe we all can be on the same page with the people of Howard County. These are my humble suggestions, and I hope you grab this opportunity and make peace with the community. I sign off with hopes that you will implement these changes so we all can move upward and onward. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Sahiwani. Our next speaker is Ms. Lauren Barrett. Do I have Ms. Lauren Barrett there? Our next speaker is Mr. Arnold Foester. Mr. Arnold Foester. Do I have him? Our next speaker is Mr. Dong Mu. Mr. Mu, please go ahead.
Dear BOE members, school redistricting should be focusing on reducing the overcrowdedness, because overcrowdedness makes every student's school life difficult. It affects their study, learning experience, and bringing more stress in their school life. It also makes teachers teaching less effective, difficult to manage the classroom size, less time to help students. Therefore, reduced crowdedness benefits every student and teacher. It is the single most important common goal and criteria for all students, parents, and teachers in related to Policy 6010. Secondly, redistricting should emphasize limiting the school bus traveling time. As the longer the commuting, the earlier the student has to get up and the less sleep the student will get, the more difficult the student could concentrate on their study after early and long bus ride. This will affect every student regardless their neighborhood and background. Thirdly, if we truly want to improve students' academic performance, we need to understand and accept that the students' success are depending on their motivations and commitment. It depends on how engaging the students are during the classes, how much time they spend on reviewing content the schools teach every day after school, and how much effort being put into their homework in their home. When my own kids did not do all these work well, they failed. They failed miserably. It is never the case the socioeconomic status of the parents of my kids' classmates determined whether my kids will be success academically or not. I can appreciate that good intention that people promote an idea of busing kids far away would solve the academic gap issue. Unfortunately, it will teach our kids a wrong lesson that their academic success depends on who their classmates are, not their personal efforts and perseverance. This misleading belief will demotivate our kids and in the end ruin their opportunities of upward mobility. There is never a solid example showing that redistricting had achieved the goal of sustainably reducing, let alone eliminating the academic gaps. However, there have been rich cases of dividing and infighting communities, frustrated and exhausted families, declining school community after redistricting based on race and other socioeconomic engineering manipulations. Politicians should stop promoting redistricting to evade their responsibilities of finding real solutions to help disadvantaged communities, such as creating more jobs, encouraging employment, reducing crime, building strong family, and strengthening communities. So all kids, regarding their background, can have a safe, nurturing, and kind environment to success.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Moore.
you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Daniel Newberger. Mr. Newberger? Please go ahead. Thank you.
Chair Wu, members of the board, Superintendent Martirano. My name is Daniel Newberger. I have 2 children in the district, a 6th grader at Harper's Choice Middle and a 3rd grader at Swansfield. I'm here today on behalf of the Howard Progressive Project to say that it's critical that Policy 6010 includes demographic characteristics of student populations as a factor for consideration. Our school district today is suffering from segregation. That's just fact. It didn't happen by law or decree. It wasn't caused by some sinister master plan. Now, rather, Hcpss schools are segregated because of decades of unfettered market forces and deep structural racism that have unraveled what was once a uniquely diverse and integrated community. We are one of the very wealthiest counties in the nation, but more than a quarter of all households in the county don't earn a living wage, and most are concentrated in a handful of schools. We have families living in million-dollar homes, and we have families struggling to make their rent, and everything in between. And what do all these families have in common? They all share a desperate desire for their children to get the best possible education in our schools. But the best educational outcomes for all the county's children are not happening, are not possible, because segregated schools hurt all of our children. Study after study has shown that schools that are socially and economically integrated produce better outcomes for all students, wealthy, middle class, and poor alike. And critically, the research also shows that integration is the key to breaking the cycle of poor academic outcomes for economically disadvantaged children. Additional resources and wraparound services are important, but the academic research is clear that resources and programs alone cannot fix the opportunity gap crisis without integrated schools. All this to say we need to keep demographic characteristics as a factor for consideration in 6010, balanced alongside facility utilization and community stability. These 3 factors, considered together, can ensure that adjustments to school attendance areas result in strong schools and communities that are best positioned to help all our kids succeed. The last round of redistricting was painful for everyone. I don't have to tell you that. I don't know anyone who walked away from that experience feeling like the right decisions were made in the right way. The proposed revisions to Policy 6010 show that the district has learned some critical lessons: clearly defined goals and methods, more transparency, stronger channels of communication between the district and parents, better processes for community feedback. These are all important improvements. With this new version of Policy 6010, the board has the opportunity to conduct redistricting in a way that leaves all communities and all parents feeling seen and heard, and we are hopeful that it will result in a school attendance area plan that allows our wonderful educators and staff to help all of Howard County students succeed. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Newberger. Our next speaker is Mrs. Susan Levin. Ms. Levin, please come forward.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Susan Levine, and I'm here tonight in regards to the proposed changes to Policy 6010, specifically with respect to the addition of exemptions for students with IEPs or 504 plans. I commend the board for adding this language to Policy 6010 to promote equity for this vulnerable disabled student population. However, I urge the board to remove the current limitation of the exemption only applying to students who have an IEP or 504 plan in place by the date of the board's redistricting vote. As background, the proposed 504 IEP exemption language is currently in the board's policy 9000, student residency, eligibility, enrollment, and assignment, but without the limiting date. Emails obtained through the Maryland Public Information Act from the 2019 redistricting showed that school officials think that parents are trying to use IEPs and 504s to get an exemption from redistricting. Quote, a few principals have brought it to our attention that families are attempting to acquire a 504 or IEP for their child, so they may be exempt from redistricting, end quote. However, in reality, this could not be further from the truth. We are talking about disabled children whose parents are trying to get them the help that they need, help that they are legally entitled to. Anyone who has been through this process can tell you that a child is not obtaining an IEP or 504 plan unless they meet the legal requirements. As a parent of a child with a 504 plan and another child with dyslexia, I want to make you aware of how long it takes a family to go through the IEP and 504 process. The IEP process takes 120 days. The process allows the school system 30 days in which to set up the initial meeting, 60 days to do the testing and meet with the family to discuss the results, and then another 30 days to develop the IEP. That is a total of 120 days and means that if a family starts the IEP process at the very beginning of the school year, it will not be completed by the board's vote. Further, for 504 plans, there are no hard deadlines like there are for IEPs, and the school only has to hold the meeting in a reasonable period of time. From my personal experience, it has taken 5 to 6 weeks to hold an initial 504 meeting. I urge you to revise the proposed policy to allow an exemption for any student who receives an IEP or 504 plan at any point during the school year of the board's redistricting vote. This stability is crucial for special needs kids. The school team that performs the testing and puts the plan in place is in the best position to understand the child's needs and execute the plan. Families and students are often struggling or in crisis when they go through the IEP or 504 process and should not have to worry about a huge transition so quickly after putting a plan into action. Please revise the proposed IEP and 504 exemptions added to Policy 6010 to allow an exemption to any student who receives an IEP or 504 plan at any point during the school year of the board's redistricting vote. This would provide needed stability and support to those families who are navigating the complicated IEP and 504 plan process, ensure equity for these disabled students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Levin.